This video is on solving quadratic equations using a method called completing the square. So I'll put a link in the upper right-hand corner to some other videos that I've done on quadratic equations and showing some other methods of solving them. So remember, the standard form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c, where a can't be equal to 0. So a quadratic has to have a variable with an exponent of 2 in it. All right, so here's how this method works. It says you can change the expression x squared plus bx equals c. So notice the c was just moved to the other side, into a perfect square trinomial by adding b over 2 squared to both sides of the equation. This is called completing the square. All right, so let's see how this works. It sounds kind of confusing, but it's actually not too bad. So keep in mind, if I'm looking at this, my a value is 1, my b value is 6, and my c value is 216. All right, so the first thing we want to do is figure out what b over 2 to the second power is. And so that would be 6 over 2 to the second power, which is, sorry, I forgot to put the exponent on here, which is 3 to the second power, which is 9. So what we're going to do is add 9 to both sides of this equation. So plus 9, plus 9. And then what I'm going to end up with is x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 225. All right, now you want to factor the left side of this. So this is a trinomial. You're looking for two numbers that multiply to 9 and add to 3. And so that would be 3 and 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 plus 3 is 6. So we're going to factor this to x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals 225. Now keep in mind, this can be simplified to x plus 3 to the second power equals 225. X plus 3 times x plus 3 is the same thing as x plus 3 to the second power. When you're solving a quadratic by completing the square, you're always going to end up with this. So you have to end up with this if you're completing the square. So you're going to end up with a binomial to the second power equals some number. And now we're going to solve this for x. Remember, when we're solving a quadratic, we're looking for the value of x when the quadratic is set equal to 0. And those x values we find are actually the x-intercepts of the graph. So the way you would solve this is to take the square root of both sides. So over here, this just becomes x plus 3, because it's saying what multiplied times itself is equal to x plus 3 to the second power. That would be x plus 3. And then over here, the square root of 225. Let me see if I can find a calculator that works. I have lots of calculators on my desk, but not all of them work. Is 15. But here's where you have to be very careful. A lot of times my students forget this. It's actually positive and negative 15. Because positive 15 times positive 15 is 225. And negative 15 times negative 15 is 225. So when you take the square root, there are actually two answers to that. A positive answer and a negative. And now what we'll do is we're going to split this into two equations. So we're going to split and solve for x. For x. So here we go. So the first thing it splits into is x plus 3 equals positive 15. And then it splits into x plus 3 equals negative 15. Because we said the square root of 225 is a positive 15 or a negative 15. And now we solve these two equations, and that's going to give us answers. So minus 3, and we get x equals 12. So there's one solution. Again, that would be the x-intercept of the graph of this quadratic, which is a parabola. And then over here, I subtract 3. And I get x equals negative 18. All right, so let's look at another example. All right, so we want to find what b over 2 to the second power is. So again, my a value is 1, my b value is negative 6, and my c value is 247. I'm going to do b over 2 to the second power. So that's going to be negative 6 over 2 to the second power, which is negative 3 to the second power, which is positive 9. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. So what we end with is t squared minus 6t plus 9 equals 256. So we'll factor the right side here. We're looking for two numbers that multiply to positive 9 and add to negative 6. If it multiplies to a positive and adds to a negative, then that means they're both negative numbers. So that would be t minus 3 times t minus 3 equals 256, not 266, 256. Again, this can be rewritten as t minus 3 to the second power. In the future, I'll skip this step and just write it like this. And now we're going to take this with both sides. And so I have t minus 3 equals the square root of 256, which is 16. Don't forget, positive or negative 16. So now I'm going to split this into two equations. And so I'm going to have t minus 3 equals 16. And I'm going to have t minus 3 equals negative 16. And now I'm going to split these equations. Plus 3 plus 3. So t equals 19. That's one solution. And then plus 3 plus 3. And t equals negative 13. So there's my two solutions. All right, let's keep going. If you've got it, you can stop, although you might want to fast forward because I'm going to show you a few other things further down, some different ones. All right? Okay, now, this actually, hang around and watch this because this one, the C is over here, and I need to move it over here. So to use the completing the square, you need it in the form ax squared plus bx equals c. So I'm going to rewrite this with the 16 over on the other side. And so that gives me x squared minus 14x equals negative 16. All right. Now we need to find what b over 2 is. So keep in mind that a is equal to 1, b is equal to negative 14, and c is equal to negative 16. So I'm going to do b over 2 to the second power. So it would be negative 14 over 2 to the second power. It will be negative 7 to the second power, which is positive 49. So we're going to add 49 to both sides of this equation. So now I have x squared minus 14x plus 49 equals 33. Factor the left side. That's going to factor to x minus 7 times x minus 7. Negative 7 plus negative 7 is negative 14. Negative 7 times negative 7 is positive 49. Now we're going to take the square root of both sides. So I have x minus 7 equals positive negative 33 square root. It's going to come out to a long decimal number. And most of the time when you have a problem like this where it's not a perfect square, they're going to tell you to round it to a certain place value. So let's say we'll round to the nearest hundredth. So that would be 2 numbers after the decimal. Hundredth. That says hundredth, believe me. All right, so this is going to round to 5.74. And now we're going to split this. So we have x minus 7 equals 5.74 positive, and x minus 7 equals negative 5.74. So go ahead and finish solving these. So plus 7 plus 7. So x equals 12.74. Add 7 here. And x equals 1.26. And that's your solutions. So if you get a long decimal, your instructions should tell you to round it to some place value. All right, so let's look at another one of these. So again, I want to put the C value over on the other side. So minus 15. So I have x squared plus 9x equals negative 15. Find what b over 2 to the second power is. So it'll be 9 over 2 to the second power. Now, watch this. This is important. Don't change this to a decimal. Go ahead and just square this. So when you multiply 9 over 2 times 9 over 2, you're going to end up with 81 over 4. All right? So don't change it to a decimal. So now we're going to add 81 fourths to both sides. So 81 fourths. So on the left side, now I have x squared plus 9x plus 81 fourths equals, so let's see, negative 15 plus 81 fourths is equal to 21 fourths. All right, so let's factor the side, which you might think, man, that looks really confusing. All right, well, you're looking for 2 numbers that multiply to 81 fourths. Well, we actually did that right here, right? It's 9 halves. Now, if you take 9 halves plus 9 halves, 9 halves plus 9 halves, when you multiply them, you get 81 fourths. When you add them, you get 18 halves, or 9, which is that. Pretty cool. So what this factors to is x plus 9 halves to the second power. Because again, 9 halves times 9 halves is 81 fourths. 9 halves plus 9 halves, I just showed you over here, is 9. So that's what this factors to. So now we're going to take the square root of both sides. So now I have x plus 9 halves equals, take the square root of that. And again, I'm going to round this, and it rounds to 2.29, positive or negative. Don't forget the positive or negative. because we need that in order to split this. So split this into x plus 9 halves equals positive 2.29, and x plus 9 halves equals negative 2.29. So now we're going to go ahead and solve this. So minus 9 halves, minus 9 halves. So 2.29 minus 9 halves is negative 2.21. So there's my first solution, x equals negative 2.21. So let's subtract 9 halves over here. So 2.29 negative minus 9 halves is negative 6.79. And there's your two solutions. All right. So let's look at an, okay. So now we got a different one. So first, let's add the 10 to both sides to move that over. Okay, so we're going to add 10 plus 10. So now I have 2y squared minus 8y equals 10. Now, when we do this, we don't want to have this 2 here. All right, so we want to get rid of that 2. So actually, I just realized, I misspoke before. When we're doing completing this square, we don't want an a value. So in order to complete this square, it needs to be in the form x squared plus bx equals c. All right, so we can't have a value here, a coefficient on the x squared. So the way we're going to get rid of that is we're just going to divide both sides of the equation by that coefficient, which is 2. And that's going to get rid of it. And so now what we have is y squared minus 4y equals 5. And now we're going to complete the square. So now we're going to find b over 2 to the second power. So that would be negative 4 over 2 to the second power. So negative 2 to the second power, which is positive 4. So now I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I end up with y squared minus 4y plus 4 equals 9. Two numbers that multiply to positive 4 and add to negative 4. That's going to be negative 2 and negative 2. So this will factor to y minus 2 to the second power equals 9. Take the square root of both sides. So I end up with y minus 2 equals positive or negative 9. So this, so it splits into y minus 2 equals positive 9, and y minus 2 equals negative 9. So solve these two equations. Add 2, y equals 11. There's one solution. Add 2, and y equals negative 7. Right? So we're going to look at one more of those, and then we're going to talk about how to use what's, well, you'll see. I won't give it away. Let's watch. So we're going to add 44. So now I have 4w squared plus 12w equals 44. We need to get rid of the coefficient here, the a. Divide both sides of the equation by 4. So now I have w squared plus 3w equals 11. So now let's find out what b over 2 is. So b over 2 to the second power. So it would be 3 over 2 to the second power. Remember, leave this as a fraction, so I'm going to get 9/4. So I'm going to add 9/4 to both sides. So now I have w squared plus 3w plus 9/4 equals 11 plus 9/4 is 53/4. Sorry, I was looking at something real quick. All right, so we're looking for two numbers that multiply to 9/4, that's 3/2, and add to 3, which is going to be 3/2 also. So this is going to factor to w plus 3/2 to the second power equals 53/4. So again, if you were to add 3/2 plus 3/2, you would get 6/2, which is 3. So it does add to 3. So now we're going to take the square root of both sides. Square root. So we have w plus 3 equals, and again, I'm going to have to round this. It comes out to 3.64, positive or negative 3.64. I'm going to split this. So I have, w plus 3 equals positive 3.64, and w plus 3 equals negative 3.64. Go ahead and solve these. So subtract 3. So my first solution is w equals 0.64, 64 hundredths, minus 3, w equals negative 6.64. All right, I got one last one for you. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, so just ignore me. So it's the exact same thing again. I'm going to move the c. Well, actually, it's not the same thing because there's a number over here already, okay? But we're still going to move this over to the other side. So plus 20. So now I have 2v to the second minus 10v equals 28. Get rid of the coefficient on the v squared. So we're going to divide by 2. Divide everything by 2. So now I have v to the second minus 5v equals 14. Now we're going to find what b to the second power is. So b over 2 squared. So it'll be negative 5 over 2 to the second. And that would be 25 fourths. All right. So add that to both sides. Plus 25 fourths plus 25 fourths. So we have v squared minus 5v plus 25 fourths equals 14 plus 25 fourths is 81 fourths. So now we need to factor this. So it's going to be v plus 5/2 to the second power. 5/2 plus 5/2 is 5. Oops, I just figured out. I did something wrong. This adds to a positive and multiplies to a negative, so this needs to be a minus sign here. Right? Negative times negative is a positive. When I add a negative plus a negative, I get a negative. This is what happens when I make my videos too long. So now we're going to the square root of both sides. So I have v minus 5/2 equals the square root of 81/4. I have to round this. Actually, I don't. Comes out to 4.5. 4.5, and I didn't round that. And don't forget, positive or negative. So now we'll split this. So v minus 5/2 equals positive 4.5, and v minus 5/2 equals negative 4.5. And solve these, so add 5/2 to both sides. And my first answer is v equals 7. Add 5/2 plus 5/2, and v equals negative 2. All right, so I apologize for that being so long. Hopefully that was helpful to you. If so, give it a like and a subscribe, and feel free to leave me a comment. Just don't tell me it was too long, because I already know it's too long. My apologies. Till next time.